You wake up tired, but your calendar's already full. Before your feet touch the floor, your mind is racing through a to-do list you haven't written down yet. Every minute of the day has a purpose, and every pause feels like failure. People call you dependable, efficient, even admirable. They never see the trembling underneath your calm exterior. You smile when they say, "I don't know how you do it all." You don't know either. You just know you have to. Because if you stop, the anxiety grows teeth. High-functioning anxiety is invisible to most people. From the outside, it looks like success. But inside, it feels like drowning in shallow water. You never feel relaxed, only relieved that the next fire is temporarily out. You don't slow down because you enjoy the pace. You run because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. Productivity becomes your armor. Achievement becomes your disguise. Exhaustion becomes your secret language. You answer emails at midnight not to impress, but because silence makes you uneasy. You double-check things not out of care, but out of fear of being the problem. You anticipate needs, predict errors, and smooth out chaos before anyone notices. And no one sees the cost. Not the tight chest, not the clenched jaw, not the constant second-guessing. When people say you're always so calm, you want to laugh, because they don't hear the sirens in your head or feel the weight you carry just to seem fine. You're praised for being composed, not realizing you've trained yourself to never fall apart. You say yes to things before you think, afraid that saying no might disappoint someone. You over-prepare for meetings, rehearse conversations, replay moments in loops. Rest feels foreign. Stillness feels threatening. And yet on the surface, everything seems okay. You show up, you perform, you excel. But you can't remember the last time you did something just because you wanted to, or said no without guilt, or spent time in silence without checking your phone. High-functioning anxiety hides in plain sight. It looks like the team player who never complains, the overachiever who always meets the deadline, the friend who texts back instantly, even when they're falling apart. It looks like control, but it's really fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being forgotten, fear of being too much or not enough. So you push yourself harder. Stay up later. Fill every blank space with something useful. Because stillness feels like exposure. Like someone might finally see through the cracks. Like everything might unravel. But here's the quiet truth. Being busy isn't the same as being okay. Functioning isn't the same as healing. And doing more doesn't always lead to feeling better. The world may reward your output, but it rarely sees your cost. And sometimes, neither do you. You've gotten so used to coping, you've forgotten what ease feels like. So used to pressure, you don't recognize peace. So used to hiding, you start believing the mask is you. But deep down you know that something isn't right. That this isn't living, it's surviving. And maybe that's the hardest part. Not that you're in pain, but that your pain is invisible. That you've built a life around being fine, when really, you're quietly unraveling. That no one asks if you're okay because you always seem to be. That the world doesn't see the ache behind your excellence. But you see it, you feel it in your bones. The tension you carry, and the dreams you defer, and the moments you miss because your mind is racing ahead. High-functioning anxiety isn't a weakness. It's not laziness. It's not a flaw. It's a response to a world that taught you being loved meant being useful. It's that safety meant control, that success meant sacrifice. But none of that is true. You are allowed to be without performing. You're allowed to rest without earning it. You're allowed to exist without proving your worth. You don't need to deserve peace. Peace is your birthright. And maybe the first step toward healing is simply letting someone see you. The real you. Not the polished one, not the productive one, but the tender one beneath it all. You don't need to be more. You don't need to do more. You don't need to hide. You're already enough, even if you're still learning to believe it. You wake up already behind, even if nothing is due. The mind whispers a list before your feet touch the floor, and you obey it, not out of excitement but compulsion. The pressure doesn't feel external anymore. It's internalized, woven into the fabric of your being. You've trained yourself to smile while sprinting, to nod calmly while your thoughts fray like a rope under tension. You get things done, always, but at what cost? Your breath never quite reaches your stomach. Your shoulders carry an invisible weight. You double-check everything because good never feels good enough. Perfectionism becomes a survival instinct. Mistakes feel like exposure, like weakness. You over-explain, over-apologize, over-deliver. Not because you're seeking praise, but because you're terrified of being seen as a burden, or worse, mediocre. High-functioning anxiety looks like discipline to the world, but it feels like quiet panic to the person living it. You're praised for your productivity, but no one sees the insomnia behind it, the internal negotiations you make to rest. I'll relax after I finish this. I can sleep once I prove I'm not lazy. But the finish line always moves. Rest becomes a reward you never quite earn. Even in stillness, your mind rehearses. Conversations, deadlines, worst-case scenarios. You're never truly off. Even when your body is still, your mind is sprinting. The irony. You help others breathe but forget to exhale yourself. You hold space for others. You're the calm in the storm for everyone else. But your own sky is thunderous. You offer reassurance easily, but can't receive it without suspicion. You downplay your struggles. Because others have it worse, because you fear sounding dramatic, because being vulnerable feels like failing, so you tuck your feelings behind competence. You smile while drowning. People say, you're always so put together. And you nod while your inner voice trembles. No one sees the rehearsed breaths, the clenched fists in your pockets. It's the mental math behind every yes. You don't want to disappoint anyone. But in the process, you abandon yourself. High-functioning anxiety doesn't shout, it whispers, it blends in, it wears achievement as armor. But that armor is heavy, and sometimes it cuts. You want to rest? But rest feels like rust. Like you'll fall apart if you stop moving, so you go and go and go until your body says no. Until your joy becomes performance. Until your laughter is calculated. Until even silence feels loud. You wonder, is it just me? No, it isn't. So many live this quiet ache. So many wear the same mask. That's why we must speak softly but honestly. We must name the storm within. We must say, I'm not okay, even if I look okay. Because healing begins with truth, and truth doesn't always look tidy. Sometimes it looks like undone hair and unanswered texts, like canceled plans and deep sighs. Like telling someone you need rest without guilt. That is not weakness. That is self-respect. You're not lazy for needing a break. You're not selfish for choosing peace. You're human. And your worth is not measured by how much you endure, or how much you hide, or how flawlessly you perform. You don't need to earn the right to rest. You were born with it. Just because your struggle is invisible doesn't make it invalid. You don't have to fall apart to deserve care. You don't have to prove your pain for it to matter. And you don't have to keep pretending. Not here, not anymore. You are seen, you are enough. Even now, especially now. You smile in the meeting, even when your chest feels tight. You reply to emails quickly, afraid silence might disappoint. You take on one more task, not because you want to, but because you fear what saying no might mean. High-functioning anxiety rarely looks like anxiety at all. On the outside, you're praised. On the inside, you're quietly unraveling. The world sees composure. You feel like a dam barely holding back a flood. You always seem prepared. But what they don't see is how you rehearse every conversation in your head first. Or how you rewrite that simple message 3 times before hitting send. It's exhausting to live this way. It's not because you're incapable, but because you're always bracing for imaginary disaster. You prepare twice as much, just in case. You triple-check things no one else notices. You fear forgetting, disappointing, failing, and yet you keep going. Because stopping feels riskier than collapse. You don't want anyone to worry, so you hide it well. You laugh at your own perfectionism like it's a charming quirk. You brush off compliments, unsure if you deserve them. You feel like a fraud, even when you've done everything right. Imposter syndrome becomes a constant companion. Praise becomes another weight to carry. What if I can't live up to this next time? What if they finally see I'm not as capable as they think? These thoughts echo quietly behind your smile. High-functioning anxiety creates invisible walls. It makes closeness feel dangerous. Gah. Because what if they saw what you're hiding? Would they still admire you then, so you overperform? Stay helpful, agreeable, polished? You say I'm fine automatically. You fear being a burden more than you fear burnout. Rest feels like a threat to your self-worth. Achievement is your armor. Productivity is your safe place. But no armor is weightless, and even the strongest need rest. It might feel like you have to keep proving yourself, that you haven't earned a break yet. But maybe the voice that says, do more, isn't always right. Maybe it's just afraid to be seen without all the doing, afraid to be loved without achievement. You learned early on that value came from performance. Maybe in school, maybe at home. When praise followed straight A's, or silence followed mistakes, you internalized it. I am what I do, not what I feel. Not what I need. Just what I produce. But you are not a machine. You're a person. With soft places. With tired bones. With a heart that wants to be held, not managed. You don't have to earn your right to slow down. You don't need to explain why you're tired. Being tired is reason enough. The hardest part is giving yourself permission. Not from a boss, not from a parent. From yourself. To not have it all together. To not answer right away. To make space for silence. Even if it feels awkward at first. Even if the guilt whispers, you're falling behind. You are not. You are right where you need to be. Doing less doesn't mean you're less. Being still doesn't mean you're lazy. Letting go doesn't mean you're losing. It might actually be where you find yourself. The real you. The one who doesn't need to impress. The one who's already enough. Even with the anxiety. Even when it flares up. Even when it tricks you into thinking you're not trying hard enough. You don't need to fight your way through every day. You can soften into it. You can be kind to yourself. That's not weakness. That's strength in a quieter form. The kind that holds you when the world expects more. The kind that says, you don't have to keep earning your place here. You already belong. Your worth isn't based on output. Your value doesn't disappear when you rest. It's there, always, steady, like a light waiting for you to see it. You're always preparing for something. Even in moments of calm, your mind rehearses the next crisis, just in case. Others admire your foresight, your planning, your vigilance. They call you organized, dependable, on top of things. But they don't see the fear that drives it. High-functioning anxiety is like living with a shadow over your shoulder. You do more because it feels like less is unsafe. The moment you pause, the guilt floods in. Guilt for not replying fast enough. Guilt for not doing extra. Guilt for not being 2 steps ahead. You've learned to outrun the silence. Silence is where doubt speaks loudest. You're falling behind. You'll disappoint them. You're not trying hard enough. So you keep moving. Fill your calendar to outrun the emptiness. You stack achievements to build walls around your uncertainty. No one notices you're tired, because you don't look tired. You smile, you joke, you show up. You're high-functioning. But the cost is high. You lie awake at night, reviewing every word you said. You question every pause in a conversation. You imagine everything that could go wrong tomorrow. And you think it's just who I am. But it isn't. It's who you've had to become. Maybe you learned early that being useful earned safety, that being quiet, polite, and efficient protected you, that doing more meant being loved, so you became a master of coping, of anticipating needs before they're spoken, of smiling while holding back tears. The world doesn't reward rest. It rewards output, performance, efficiency. We internalize that. That resting meant slacking. That ease meant laziness. That stillness was selfish. But none of that is true. You were never meant to be a machine. You're not built for endless motion. The shame around rest isn't yours. It's a reflection of a culture that forgot what it means to be human. That forgot slowness is not weakness. High-functioning anxiety masks itself in productivity, in perfectionism, in people-pleasing. But beneath it is the same aching need to be seen, to be safe, to be allowed to stop without fear. You've done what you had to do to survive. It deserves compassion, not criticism. Your coping isn't failure. It's evidence of strength. But strength also means recognizing when it's time to soften, to loosen the grip, to breathe a little deeper. The world won't fall apart if you rest. And even if it does, Maybe it wasn't a world meant to be held by one person. Sometimes slowing down is the bravest thing you can do, not because it's easy, but because it feels so wrong. And yet so necessary. You're allowed to go at your own pace. You're allowed to take up space even when you're not producing. You're allowed to exist without proving your worth. Let that be your quiet revolution. Not a scream, not a sprint, but a stillness. A pause that says, I matter, even here. When you stop rushing, you might begin to hear yourself again. Your real voice. Not the anxious one. It's the one that says, I want peace. It's the one that says, I'm tired. The one that asks, isn't it enough? And maybe it is. Maybe it always was. You keep saying you're fine because it feels easier than explaining. You smile because people expect you to. But inside, you're holding back a tide. High-functioning anxiety teaches you to perform peace even when you're unraveling. You've become fluent in the language of pretending. You work late, answer quickly, volunteer for more. Because stillness feels suspicious. Because rest feels like laziness wearing a mask. Your thoughts never stop, even when your body does. You lie awake while the world sleeps, listing what you haven't done yet. Every success becomes a new baseline. Every moment of rest, a negotiation with guilt. You get praise for being dependable, responsive, productive, but no one sees the cost. The missed meals, the shallow breaths, the locked jaw. No one asks how much effort it takes to appear effortless. You learn to internalize applause as pressure. You fear disappointing others more than exhausting yourself. You'd rather be burned out than perceived as lazy, so you hide the struggle beneath competence. You show up early, stay late, say yes even when you want to scream no. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're trying not to fall apart. You don't know how to stop? Because if you stop, what might come up? The fear isn't failure, it's exposure. It's being seen as someone who isn't always together. High-functioning anxiety wraps itself in success, so it's rarely noticed, rarely named. It whispers that your value is in your output, that rest must be earned, deserved, justified. Even your hobbies become tasks to optimize. You start a meditation app and track your streak, take walks and feel guilty for not listening to a podcast. You chase calmness with clenched fists. It's exhausting to always be on, to always be good, helpful, capable. You wonder if anyone would love the you who does less. You wonder if you even know that version of yourself. You suspect there's a self beneath the armor. A self that doesn't need constant proving. Self that simply exists and is worthy. But you've buried them under checklists. You fear that if you stop striving, you'll disappear. You fear your achievements are your only identity, but they are not. You're not your inbox. You're not your to-do list. You're not your productivity. You are the quiet between thoughts. You're the breath you forgot to take. You are the person who deserves to rest, even when there's more to do. But the world rewards what it sees. It doesn't see how hard you try just to look calm. It doesn't see the shaking hands under the table, the mental rehearsals before every conversation, the hours spent overthinking a single sentence. It only sees results. No. And you fear that without those, you'll lose your place. So you push through migraines. You write emails with tears in your eyes. You over-apologize and under-rest. You fear you're not enough if you don't over-deliver. But anxiety is not a character flaw. It's not a failure of mindset. It's not your fault. It's a survival strategy that worked too well. It kept you alert. It kept you safe. But now, it's burning you out. Maybe you're ready to let it soften. You can begin with gentleness. You can breathe before you reply. You can pause even when there's pressure to continue. You can notice the tension without judging it. You can let go without losing yourself. You are allowed to rest without explanation. You are allowed to be enough as you are. You don't need to be constantly producing to deserve peace. Even in silence, you are valuable. Even in stillness, you are whole. You're not broken. You're tired. You've carried too much for too long. Now, you're learning to put some of it down, not because you've earned it, but because you're human, because you don't need to prove your worth every minute. High functioning doesn't mean painless, it just means hidden. But now, you're choosing visibility. Not for performance, but for healing. You're reclaiming your energy, reclaiming your softness, claiming your life. It begins with saying, I deserve to rest, and believing it's true. You've smiled through meetings, laughed at parties, and kept deadlines sharp as knives. But when the lights go out and silence returns, A familiar ache surfaces, the ache of never really resting. You're tired in a way that sleep can't touch. Your exhaustion is spiritual, emotional, cellular, but no one sees it because you keep going. You answer texts while your heart whispers, "I need a break." You push through tasks with clenched teeth and a fluttering chest. Your to-do list is your comfort and your curse. People call you impressive, capable, reliable. But inside you wonder if anyone sees the cost of that label, the cost of being the strong one. You've built a life that looks perfect from a distance. Yet it feels like you're sprinting through fog, unsure where the finish line is, or if there even is one. Rest feels risky. Slowing down feels like failure. Because your anxiety equates stillness with danger. What if everything falls apart when you stop? What if people see the cracks when you finally sit down? What if you're only valuable when you're useful? These thoughts aren't facts, but they've lived inside you long enough to feel like truth, and unlearning them takes time and tenderness. The world won't applaud your pause, but your nervous system will. That matters more. You don't owe the world a version of you that's always on. You don't need to earn your right to breathe deeply. Your worth isn't a currency to be traded for productivity. You can begin with something small. A moment of doing nothing and letting it be enough. A morning where you don't rush. Listen to your breath when it slows. Listen to your body when it whispers before it screams. You are allowed to answer. You are allowed to say, "I can't today." You are allowed to say, "This is too much." You are allowed to leave some things undone. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise, because burnout isn't a badge. Because anxiety disguised as achievement is still anxiety. Because survival is not the same as living. And you deserve more than just survival. You are more than your output. You are more than your schedule. You are more than your ability to function under pressure. Rest isn't a reward at the end of perfection. It's a birthright. You don't have to apologize for it. What if the goal was peace, not performance? If the prize wasn't applause, but presence? What if healing looked like doing less, not more? These aren't easy shifts, especially when the world praises the hustle, especially when your anxiety has been your compass. But your inner world is not the world's stage. You don't need to keep performing. You are allowed to just be. To be soft, to be uncertain, to be human. The people who love you don't need your perfection. They need your presence. They need your truth. Even if that truth is messy, even if that truth says, "I'm not okay today," it's still worthy of love. You've carried so much for so long. You've shown up through fear, through panic, through pain, and that's remarkable. But you don't have to keep proving your resilience. You're allowed to just be tired. You're allowed to put the burden down. Anxiety may still knock on your door, but it doesn't have to drive the car anymore. You can take the wheel gently, not with force, but with compassion, not with urgency, but with awareness. One breath at a time. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are simply tired. And that's not a flaw. It's a sign it's time to rest. To reconnect with yourself. To stop asking what's next. And start asking, what do I need right now? The answer might surprise you. It might be silence. It might be sunlight. It might be sleep. Whatever it is, give it to yourself without guilt, without explanation, without permission from anyone but your own heart. You are already enough, even in stillness, especially in stillness. This is quiet philosophy, where thinking isn't loud, and life doesn't need to be either. Subscribe if you haven't already, not for noise, but for something you can actually feel.